All right, so still on composition of functions, but this is a little bit different because we are actually evaluating. Okay, we will evaluate. So let's recap a little bit on what does composition of function first. Okay, so we have number one here, f of g. So let's do f of g of x. Okay, so that means your outside function is f, your inside function is g. So your outside function, so when we try to do this, you will write the outside function first, which is this f of x. So and then replace every x with a parentheses. Okay. So now I'm gonna do, instead of writing x squared, I'm gonna write parentheses squared plus 3 because that's really what your f of x is, right? And then inside this parentheses that's supposed to be x, we will replace that with the g of x because that's really what your function of f is a function of. Okay, so we have g of x inside of it. So now inside that, I'm gonna write the whole g of x, which is 2x minus 1. Okay, all right, so now that this is technically correct now. Okay, now depending on what your instruction is, if the instruction is to simplify it, then you have to simplify it. Okay, so now you have 2x minus 1 squared, then that would mean 2x minus 1 and then 2x minus 1. You're multiplying it twice plus 3, right? And then now we will distribute that. So you have 4x squared. 4x times negative 1 is, 2x times negative 1 is 2x. Then now we do the negative 1. You have 2x again, and negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, and then plus 3. Now simplifying, combining like terms, you have 4x squared minus 4x, okay, plus 4. So this is f of g of x. That's all of that. Now, how about if you want f of g, right, this, of negative 1. So that means your x here, that x right there, is going to be replaced or substituted with negative 1. So in other words, if you have simplified f of g of x, you can just replace this x with a negative 1. So let's do that. So 4 parentheses squared minus 4 parentheses plus 4. So really all the x's, just like what I did in here, I will replace it with a I'm gonna replace it with a parentheses, and then inside that parentheses I'm gonna put negative 1. Okay, and so now that's negative 1 here. And so now when we simplify that, we will evaluate. You actually have to simplify it. So negative 1 squared is 1 times 4, that's 4. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4 plus 4, which is now equal to 12. So this is f of g of negative 1. Okay, now, how did we solve this again? Well, we solve for f of g of x first, then we have this expression, and then after that, we use the f of g of negative 1. We substituted negative 1. Now, what's another way of solving? Okay, if what about if we don't do this part? Okay, we just do f of g of negative 1. Well, we can do that too. Okay, so again, your outside function is f, so therefore I'm gonna start with uh, my function x, but my function of f, but I'm gonna again replace all the x's with square, right? Plus 3. Okay, and inside this will be the g of x, right? But instead, I'm gonna replace again all the x's. Okay, so inside this will be this 2x minus 1, right? Now, but now we're not really looking for f of x, f of g of x. We're looking for negative 1. So therefore, after you substituted the g of x inside, now I'm going to replace that x with a negative 1. So I'm going to have 2 times 1 minus 1 squared. So I replace that x with a negative, not 1, but a negative 1. This should be negative 1, okay? If I can fit that in there. Okay, minus 1 plus 3. And then we can simplify it like this. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2 minus 1, that's negative 3. Negative 3 squared. So this is going to be negative 2 minus 1 squared plus 3. And then negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3 squared plus 3. Negative 3 squared is 9 plus 3, that's 12. So either way, you will get the same answer. Okay? So it really just depends on how you do it. Okay, so now let's try the second example. Okay, I'm gonna erase this so I have some space to write. Okay, and I'm gonna solve this again both ways. All right, so I should be careful to not delete even my the sides. All right. Okay, so now we need to do g of f. So let's do the g of f of x first, okay? So what if that's the only question you have? You don't have a number. They just want to for you to answer g of f of x. Well, let's try it anyway, okay? Now the outside function is g, so therefore we will copy the g function 2, but instead of writing x, we will replace it with parentheses minus 1. And then inside that parentheses, we will put in the inside function, which is f. So now I'm going to put x squared plus 3. Okay, and then now we will simplify this by distributing the 2. So now you have 2x squared plus 6 minus 1. Combining like terms, you have 2x squared plus 5. So this is g of f of x. Okay, now what about if they actually want g of f of negative 1? Okay, all right, g of f of negative 1. So that means this is your g of f of x. So therefore, we can just replace that x with negative 1. So replace your x with parentheses first, plus 5. And inside that parentheses will be negative 1. Okay? Simplifying this, negative 1 squared is 1 times 2. That's 2 plus 5. So this is all equal to 7. Okay, so again, we solve this by solving g of f of x first. Now, let's try to solve it without having to do that, and we'll just do this right away. Okay, so again, I'm gonna start here because I don't have a lot of space. So the outside function is g, so this is your outside function. So, in fact, I'm gonna copy that f of negative g of f of negative 1. Outside function is g, so I'm going to copy the g function, but instead of writing x, I'm going to replace that with parentheses minus 1. Okay. Now, inside this parentheses will be your f function because the inside function. So I'm going to have x squared plus 3, right? But then what I really want is f of negative 1. So therefore, inside that x, I'm going to replace with negative 1. So 2 parentheses negative 1 squared, that's my x, plus 3 minus 1. And we will simplify. All right, so negative 1 squared is 1 plus 3 is 4. So this is going to be 2 times 4 minus 1. Well, 2 times 4 is 8 minus 1. That's equal to 7. So again, this is the same answer as that one. All right, if you have any question, feel free to message below. In fact, I'm going to leave you one problem that you can solve on your own. Okay, so what about if you try? Why don't you try and see? Write your answer below in the comments below. All right, g of f of 2. Okay, what is evaluate that expression? Evaluate that function. See you then.